Look, my main takeaway, as I was just saying, Utah is built very similarly to Notre Dame. They are possibly an even better coached unit. They turn the ball over really effectively. They get in the face of quarterbacks, and USC straight up gave up last week. That's why I'm picking Utah.
LSU looked like they gave up against Florida State and then responded.
That's a different
Alabama
kind of giving up,
in the
though.
fourth quarter against Texas looked like they gave up and they responded.
I don't think that those are created equally, though. I don't think that there is a very different tonal.
Sure, but okay. I always a team, a ranked team, a good team, a well-recruited team, a well-coached team, at least offensively.
Mm-hmm.
I always like when a team, not like, I think that's a bad word, but I always lean towards picking the team that goes on the road, gets embarrassed, and then goes back home the following week, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because here's one – so there's one thing about Lincoln Riley that when I look at this game, Joe, for me, okay, where I just don't know, all right, if they never really have consistently back-to-back bad games. Caleb Williams is not going to throw 3 picks in the first half again.
No,
it's not going to happen. When you turn the ball over in your own side of the field and you give Notre Dame, they turn the ball over 5 times. They're not going to do that, okay? Now, can they pick off Caleb Williams? Can some things happen? Can they create fumbles? Okay, sure, yeah, maybe, but not that much. It's not USC that I'm worried about, Joe, because I think USC can score 28, 35, 38 points. They did it against that defense that was better, in my opinion, last year. Okay, last year's defense, I think, is even better than the one that they have here. They're the 9th total defense in the country. Joe, they are 115th in offense. Utah is.
Yeah.
They're not going to score enough. It's the same when they face a really good opponent in Oregon State. And quite honestly, it's the reason why Florida hung around. Graham Mertz's first game at Florida, they hung around because Utah did not have the ability to put them away. We walked away from that game, Joe, saying to ourselves, all right, well, you know what? Florida might be okay defensively. Like, Florida's not as bad as we thought that they would be. They didn't win, but they're not as bad as we thought they'd be. Utah's not going to score enough.
Okay, here's the thing, though, and yes, I'm well aware that offensively they have been inept, but I also look at who they've gone up against. You know, I made a comment that they only scored 31 against Weber State. Let's put that out of the conversation for a second because it's an FCS opponent.
But
they played UCLA.
Should we? Because it's only 31.
Yes, it's definitely concerning, but for them to go up against UCLA and struggle offensively and still win, and to struggle offensively against Oregon State, who has a decent defense, not an elite defense, but a good defense.
Yeah, but Dante Moore right now as a freshman is not Caleb Williams as a junior.
Understandable. I totally understand. What I'm getting at here is that this might be the worst defense that they've faced, probably close to the Cal defense. This defense for USC stinks. And USC's defense last week wasn't even really tested. It gave up a lot of points, didn't give up a lot of yards because Notre Dame didn't have to drive the length of the field for most of their drives because they were just given the ball in plus territory. And also there was a kick return touchdown. So I think that defense were kind of maybe giving them a little bit of a pass because they weren't as bad last week in terms of yardage. If there's a game for your offense to maybe get a little bit of juice with a backup quarterback, it's this USC defense. If that Arizona freshman quarterback could do what he did, I think that Bryson Barnes could not throw for 300-something yards and 4 touchdowns, but do some good things to put them in a position to win the game by a score.
Arizona as a unit is all around better than Utah is offensively.
Not vastly, though.
Yes, they are. Joe, they can't run the football. The reason that they have rushing yards, Joe, they're 115th in the country.
Yeah.
Offensively and total offense.
Mm-hmm.
You know how the only reason why they're running the football effectively? You want me to give you a guess? It's the backup quarterback, Johnson, I think.
Yes. Nate Johnson, who started some games. He started the Oregon State game.
And look what happened there. I am not saying, okay, I am not saying that USC is not going to give up points. I'm not saying this defense is any good. They're not. But you know what they're not? They're not as inept as Utah offensively. They're just – and I don't think Utah can keep up with Caleb. And I think Caleb's going to want to come out and prove a point. Look, this is crazy because I'm the one instead of you coming out here defending Caleb Williams.
This is insane.
It is insane. Like, no wonder that there was an eclipse over the weekend. I might not like some of his antics. I'm also not stupid enough to pick against him in back-to-back weeks when he's on his way home. I'm not going to there's no way I'm going to do that because I think that they got to find – now, look, here's one thing that concerns me about USC and where I think you could be right and Utah wins. That defensive front versus this offensive line could be a bloodbath.
I was just about to bring that up.
I do think that Lincoln is going to find ways to get the ball out quicker so that Caleb's not all over the place. And look, they got to find a running game. They're going to have to try to find a running game. Okay. So hold my beer, Ruffino. I'll hold anybody's beer. Pause. But I'm going to drink it.
You're bringing up the offensive line thing that I think is really critical for this conversation because
very critical.
Utah is 5th in team sacks. They're 10th in team tackles for loss. And you know what? Those numbers are not inflated. They have played some very good football teams, not elite football teams, but some quality teams. Conversely, USC has had one good opponent so far this year, and their offensive line has looked better than it actually is. We were exposed.
What do you call Colorado? Would you call Colorado a good team?
A mid team. They're very mid. That is the most I will give to them. They're competitive. They should win more than they will. I wouldn't put them in that good category after what they did last week. But
fair.
My point is that if this happens where that Utah front gets home, gets pressures, gets in Caleb Williams' face and play good contain, and they're, again, a very, very well-coached unit. Technically sound unit. That's what led to the mistakes against Notre Dame and the picks. He couldn't roll around.
28 points in the last 3 weeks. Their offense, let me just say this again now. Their offense has scored 28 points in the last 3 weeks. Against Cal, they scored excuse me. That's my fault. They scored 34 against Cal. I wrote down 14 in my notes. It's not 14.
Okay.
So 34-7. That's on me. They still are not scoring enough. I can look up and see, okay, you won 20-13 against Baylor. You only got one offensive touchdown against UCLA. You only scored once against Oregon State. Cal sucks. We saw that. Joe, Auburn beat Cal, okay? The box score, when I look at that Cal game and I look at the team or individual stats, okay, Bryson Barnes went 15-23, didn't throw a touchdown. They had to run the ball for 159 yards. They had 2 guys damn near run for 100 yards. Now, can they do that against USC? Absolutely. But what is the biggest difference here? Are you – let me ask you this question, Joe.
Yeah.
A team that has not, okay, all year long been anywhere capable, the 24 points, 20 points, 31 points against Weber State, 7 points against UCLA, 7 points against Oregon State, 34 against Cal, I will give you. Are you sure that they can keep up with Caleb? Are you 1,000% sure that if this game got into the 30s that they can keep up with him? Because I don't think that they can.
If it does get up to that high scoring, if it's in the 30s in the fourth quarter, yeah, I don't disagree. I think that that's a really difficult task. But what we learned last week is that you don't necessarily have to keep up with him. There has been an exposure, as we phrased it last show that we did a couple shows ago, that there is now an exposure of how to stop Caleb Williams. There is now a formula to doing it. So you got to find a way to slow him down.
True, but a lot of the turnovers he had are self-inflicted wounds.
I think you can make the argument it's a little bit deeper than that because he
threw in the triple coverage. That's a self-inflicted wound.
Yes, because he wasn't and able to do what he's done all season long, which is run around in circles and then find somebody after things open up. That stuff wasn't opening
you're
up.
Saying that because it's Notre Dame, but if Rudy Putek, if he would have thrown in a triple coverage against Rudy Putek, you would come out here and say, well, you know what? He threw in a triple coverage. Like he just had. Why can't a dude have an off night? I promise you.
He can, but there's also a lot of credit has been given to Al Golden for his defensive performance.
I got a bottle of, well, first off, Al Golden needs to take a goddamn suit off. Okay. Second off, I got a bottle of Blanton's that says he doesn't throw 3 picks again this week.
Okay, I'm not going to take that bet, but you get 1 turnover, 1 fumble. My point is here is that
it's not going to stop him this week. I'm telling you.
This Utah defense is better than the Notre Dame one. And if you have now on film how a good defensive front disrupted him into throwing 3 picks, your defensive front is going to do the same thing, or at least should get close to that production. It's not like they're going up against Washington. I think that'd be a different discussion here. If Utah had Washington's defense, I think we'd be having a completely different conversation. But this is an elite defense. This is one of the best defenses in the country. You know what? They're not going to be able to run the ball at all. Utah has the best run defense in the country.
I agree with my man here.
Say go Irish. I was going to say, what team do you like? Because I'm sure we'll end up pissing you off. But
no, I don't care. He can say go Irish if he's going to keep pushing us up like this.
But what I'm saying is you're probably going to find a way to make because he's saying go Irish. You're probably going to find a way to make him upset.
If somebody has to promote our show, I don't give two. There's only 2 things he can say on the show, and I can't even say them. They both, so
still appreciate the love though.
Yeah,
I'm joking. We seemingly once a week. There's a different.
I don't know who John Kennedy is. Who's John Kennedy?
He's the always Irish dipshit. The
one that sounds like the pirate from Aladdin.
Yeah, the guy that you quote tweet.
The parrot.
Yeah, that guy sucks.
Well, then why does he want me to bring him on? He said drunk Vigo says he won't subscribe until then.
He wants you to go on the show with him because I think tell him
to invite me. I'll go on there with him.
Yeah, we're not going
to. I mean, he's got to back off. I mean, look. Side note. Just side note. You can talk about LSU all you want, but when your team's getting beat, you can't be talking shit about your former head coach when you're getting your shit kicked in.
Yeah, I went on the show and I said that we can't be talking.
You can't do that. You can't do that. One final thought on this game, as our good buddy Josh Paper Popper or whatever he says. Third down conversion rate. This is interesting to me. You know what else I think could give USC a lot of Joe, I don't want to say extra fuel, but more chances at all this. Utah is one of the worst teams in the country on third down conversions.
Offensively.
Okay. All right. How many times is that offense potentially could go 3 and out and USC gets the ball back? Because it's not as if the teams are just flat out stopping them. They can't hit open passes sometimes. It's what happened against Oregon State.
Yeah.
So just a thought on this. Paper popper, Josh. Okay, I don't know what he calls it. But nevertheless.
It's paper pop.
Paper pop. Okay, desk pop. The other guys. You ever seen the other guys?
I have seen the other guys. Good movie.
Hey, when was the last time you did a desk pop? Fall of 07.